A burst pipe? A dead water heater? The AC calling it quits? Who do you call? HomeServe is an easy way to handle unexpected home repairs with plans covering stuff basic homeowners insurance usually won't. Instead of scrambling for a contractor, you make one call to get the repair process started. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe right now. Go to homeserve.com/podcast for 50% less your first year. That's homeserve.com/podcast. Savings compared to renewal price. Void in Florida.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. On the morning of March 12, 1888, New Yorkers woke up to a city that had ceased to function. The night before, temperatures had been mild. Rain had been falling. Then, shortly after midnight, the temperature dropped from 33 degrees to 8 degrees Fahrenheit in a matter of hours. The rain turned to snow. The wind reached hurricane force. By morning, the streets of New York City were buried under drifts of 40 to 50 feet. You could still find pictures of this on the internet. It is quite something. The elevated trains, the city's primary means of mass transportation, were frozen solid on their tracks. Tens of thousands of passengers were caught between stations. Only 30 out of 1,000 workers at the New York Stock Exchange made it to work that day. The most modern city in America had been stopped cold by the weather. And when the snow finally melted, the people who ran the city sat down and asked a question they had been avoiding for years. What do we do when the trains can't run? Our history brief today covers some weird history and why ancient statues are missing their noses. A quick word from our sponsors.
Are you noticing your car insurance rate creep up even without tickets or claims? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry handles the legwork by comparing quotes side by side from over 50 top insurers so you can confidently hit buy. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Jerry even tracks rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Don't settle for higher rates. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/libsyn today. That's jerry.ai/libsyn.
This day in history. On June 13th, 323 BCE, Alexander the Great died in Babylon at the age of 32. His conquests created one of the largest empires of the ancient world and spread Greek culture across 3 different continents. On June 13th, 1966, the Supreme Court issued its decision in Miranda versus Arizona, requiring police to inform suspects of their constitutional rights before questioning them. Story of the day. So let's first talk about New York City's transit system in 1888. The city's primary public transportation was the elevated railway, the L, or a network of steam powered trains running on iron trestles above the streets of Manhattan. The L had transformed New York, there's no question about that. Before it existed, getting around the city meant horse drawn streetcars on crowded surface streets. Slow, unreliable, and subject to every variety of gridlock that a rapidly growing city could produce. The elevated railway offered speed and capacity that no surface system could match. By 1888, approximately 200 million passengers a year were riding the L, an extraordinary volume of transit for a city that was growing faster than almost any other place on Earth. The system had one catastrophic vulnerability, however. It was above ground. It was not supposed that a snowstorm could seriously affect travel on the trestles, but that one day, before 10 o'clock, all attempt at regularity in dispatching and running trains was abandoned, and not 1/10 of the number of trains usually in progress were in motion. By early afternoon of the blizzard, the elevated railways had stopped entirely. The platforms filled with stranded passengers who had no way to get down to the street. Up to 15,000 people were stranded on elevated trains. Some waited for hours in freezing temperatures before rescue. Some climbed down the trestle supports, a dangerous and quite terrifying descent, because waiting was just not an option. On the streets below, the situation was no better. Horse drawn vehicles were useless in drifts that reached the second stories of buildings. Delivery wagons, carriages, and streetcars were abandoned in place, adding to the chaos. The most appalling thing was the absolute breaking off of all outside communication. Telegraph lines were down, telephone lines were down. New York City was, for several days, cut off from the rest of the country. Around 400 people were killed by the storm, with about half the deaths in New York City alone. The blizzard lasted 4 days. When it was finally over and the city began digging itself out, the damage assessment was sobering. But it was not merely the physical damage that focused minds in City Hall. It was the realization of how completely a single weather event had paralyzed a city of more than 1 million people. The deadly elevated rail disaster led to the development of the subway system in New York City. Railway and telegraph lines were disabled, and this provided the impetus to move these pieces of infrastructure underground. And the logic was straightforward. A system that ran underground could not be stopped by snow. It could not be knocked out by ice on the rails. And it could not strand 15,000 passengers on exposed platforms in freezing temperatures. Underground was just simply better. And the blizzard of 1888 had made that argument more forcefully than any engineer or urban planner ever could. And they did try before this, I should let you know. Anyway, New York was not the first city to act on this logic. That distinction actually belongs to Boston. As I was doing this research, I initially thought it was New York City, but no, it was indeed Boston. Within a couple of years of the storm, Boston had plans on the table, and 9 years after the blizzard, the first underground subway system in the country rolled under Boston. New York City, with its much larger and more complex elevated railway network, moved more slowly. The planning process was lengthy, the political negotiations were contentious, and the engineering challenges of tunneling under a densely built city of this scale were formidable. A plan for building subways was formulated in 1894, and construction finally began in 1900. The men who built it were John MacDonald, the general contractor, August Belmont, the financier, and William Barclay Parsons, the chief engineer. They tunneled under the streets of Manhattan using the cut and cover method, digging enormous trenches, laying the tracks and tunnels, and then covering them back over. It was one of the greatest engineering undertakings in American history. In October of 1904, New York's first official subway line opened. 28 stops over a roughly 9-mile distance under Manhattan. 16 years after the blizzard that had made it necessary. The subway was not the only thing that Blizzard built, however. In the wake of the storm, city officials realized the dangers of above ground telegraph, water, and gas lines, and thus moved them below ground as well. The buried infrastructure that modern New Yorkers take for granted, the pipes, the cables, the wires that run beneath the streets, owes its subterranean location largely to the lessons of March 1888. New York City set a precedent for other major cities across the Mid Atlantic and the Northeast regions when they buried all electric, telephone, and other communication wires underground to avoid another catastrophe. The blizzard did not merely inconvenience a city, it, you may argue, redesigned one. The New York City subway now carries approximately 4.5 million passengers every day. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only major transit system in the world that operates without interruption. It has 472 stations. It covers 245 miles of track. And it exists in its essential conception because on a March night in 1888, the temperatures dropped 25 degrees in just a few hours. The rain turned to snow, and a city that had built its transportation above the ground discovered what happened when the sky turned against it. The answer, of course, was to go underground. The History Brief. Take a walk through almost any museum with an ancient collection, and you'll notice something quite strange. Ancient Egyptian statues, Roman busts, Greek sculptures, so many of them are missing their noses. At first glance, it seems almost impossible. How could thousands of statues, created across different civilizations and separated by centuries, all end up with the exact same damage? Was there some ancient epidemic of broken noses? Well, actually, the answer is much more interesting. Part of it is simply physics. The nose sticks out further than almost any other feature on a statue. Over hundreds or thousands of years, statues fall, buildings collapse, earthquakes strike, and erosion takes its toll. When stone sculptures are damaged, the nose is often the first thing to break off. But that only explains some cases. Archaeologists have discovered that many noses weren't broken accidentally at all, they were deliberately removed. To understand why, you have to understand how ancient people viewed statues. Today, we tend to think of statues as art. Ancient Egyptians often viewed them very differently. Many believed that a statue could serve as a vessel for a person's spirit or life force. A statue was not merely a representation of a king or noble or god, it could possess a kind of symbolic power. And if you wanted to destroy that power, well, you attacked the face, specifically the nose. In ancient Egyptian belief, breath was associated with life itself. By chiseling off the nose, someone could symbolically kill the statue, preventing it from breathing and rendering it powerless. It was a form of spiritual sabotage, you might say. Archaeologists have found countless examples where the damage appears highly targeted. The nose is removed while much of the rest of the sculpture remains intact. Sometimes ears are damaged as well, preventing the statue from hearing prayers. Other times, arms are broken off to stop the figure from receiving offerings. This happened for many reasons. Political rivals sometimes defaced monuments of previous rulers. Tomb robbers damaged statues to neutralize any supernatural protection that they feared might exist. Religious changes could also trigger destruction. When new regimes took power, statues associated with old beliefs often became targets. In other words, some of the world's most famous ancient sculptures were victims of something we might recognize today. We could call it political vandalism, or even cancel culture, but kind of, in an ancient style. What's fascinating is that these acts often worked exactly as intended. The people responsible wanted future generations to remember the statue differently, or perhaps not to remember it at all. Yet, ironically, the damage itself has become part of the story. Today, when you see a broken Egyptian face or a Roman bust missing its nose, we're not just looking at an ancient sculpture. We're looking at evidence of conflict, fear, politics, religion, and human emotion. The damage tells a story every bit as important as the statue itself. So I guess next time you visit a museum and notice another ancient figure missing its nose, remember, it probably wasn't just bad luck. Someone, thousands of years ago, may have broken it on purpose. And that act of destruction has survived almost as long as the monument itself. I know, history's weird. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel where we have different videos that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.
You know that music? That's the sound of shopping for car insurance the old way. Life's too short for that. Jerry makes car insurance easier. Open the app, answer a few questions, and Jerry pulls up to 20 quotes from top insurers. Then choose and switch right in the app. No re-entering your information. No saxophone solos. And Jerry keeps checking rates for you. So you're not back on hold 6 months from now. Visit jerry.ai/libsyn today.